Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Claire Van Blaricum. I will be the moderator of today's forum. The League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara is sponsoring today's forum for the candidates for Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, 1st District. We hope this forum will inform you, the voters, of the candidates' views on issues of interest. The League does not support or oppose any candidate. Thank you very much for attending. I'd like to give thanks to Sylvia Uribe for doing our translation today from English to Spanish. Headphones are available if you desire them. Nimmer Productions will be videotaping the forum, and the video will be online at the League of Women Voters website in both languages. I'd like to introduce a couple of elected officials who are with us today. Janet Wolf, 2nd District Supervisor, here to scope out her potential colleagues, thank you. From Santa Barbara City Council, we have Jason Dominguez. Jason, where are you? Greg Hart, back here. And Kathy Murillo. So thank you for coming, and thank you to everyone else. Candidates' materials are available on the back table. The League of Women Voters information and voter registration materials are available at the back. Everyone is welcome to join the League, men and women, despite the name, and scholarships for membership are available. We also encourage you to make a tax-deductible contribution to the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara Education Fund, which finances voter education programs, such as today's forum. Beverly King, Beverly, would you wave and let people know where you are? We'll be happy to assist you with either membership or with making contributions. And both of the ladies back there, Lucia and Beverly, will help you with voter registration if you would like to do that today. Please refrain from any outbursts or displays, no signs, t-shirts, etc. And please hold your applause for the end. That way we will be able to get through more questions and we will maintain our neutral tone. The candidates are Jennifer Christensen and Doss Williams. We want to thank you very much for being willing to be here today and presenting your views. Here's how our forum will work. We follow the traditional League of Women Voters process and ground rules, which the candidates have both agreed to. To maintain civility and the issue-oriented nature of our forum, we do not allow negative comments about the other candidates' character or qualifications, but rather we ask that the speakers address their own qualifications and their own vision for the office they're running for, and their views on issues facing the county and the 1st District. The League of Women Voters precision timers, who are right here, you raise your hands, okay, will hold up cards with 1 minute and 30-second warnings and then a stop sign. When the stop sign goes up, I will stop you. The candidates will make brief opening statements of up to 2 minutes. I will then ask several questions depending on the time available. With 2 candidates only, we should be able to get through quite a few questions. These are questions that have been prepared by the League. If you agree with the other candidate, please so indicate, giving us time for more questions. You will each have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. We will also rotate the first responder. After the first several questions, there will be a short break. That's when Mr. Nimmer will probably change his tape. During the first part of the forum, audience members may write questions for the candidates on index cards that we will make available. And here they are. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we will give you a card. Please keep your questions short, stick to the issues you care about, and raise your hand if you want a card. We will collect the cards and sort them at the break. If you write your question in Spanish, we will translate it. Our format does not allow audience members to directly question the candidates. When the forum resumes after the break, the candidates will answer as many questions as possible within the time limit. If there are questions on a similar topic, I may combine them into a single question. So if you don't hear your exact wording, that does not mean we are not necessarily addressing your issue. Okay. At the end of the questions, each of the candidates will have an opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. We're ready? Let's get started. Jennifer, will you make the first opening statement, please?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this afternoon, especially on a lovely Saturday. I know you probably had a lot of other things you'd like to do. I'm Jennifer Christensen, and I am your county investment officer. That means that I manage $1 billion portfolio of our tax dollars for the benefit of our county, our special, I'm getting the signal that my translator can't hear me, sorry. So I manage $1 billion of our taxes for the benefit of the county, the special districts, and our schools. My background includes 15 years with the County of Santa Barbara. I actually started in the County Council's office thanks to, you can all thank Shane Stark for hiring me into the county. Blame him or thank him. Yes, and have made my way through, well, I have managed to work with every single department at the county, providing municipal law advice and financial advice. And I'm running because we face very serious financial challenges at the county. We are facing at this point $1 billion, over $1 billion of unfunded liabilities at the county. And if we don't deal with them, they only get more expensive. And what that means is that we won't be able to provide essential services to our citizens in our community, like public safety and public health. And it is for that reason that I have decided that I'm willing to give up my job as the county investment officer, something I enjoy very much, to serve on the other side of the dais, because I think it is so critically important the decisions that get made by the board that affect us every day.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Good afternoon. I'm Das Williams. I'm your state legislator. I represent an area that runs from Los Alamos in the north to Oxnard in the south, 457,000 folks. That can be quite a job, and it's a lot of shuffling around, but I love serving this community. I actually made an oath, and if that sounds very Old Testament intense, well, I was a really intense teenager. When I was 17, I made an oath because I love this community so much, to serve and to protect it. At the time, I really didn't know how I was going to do that, but I soon found that you could really make a difference in elections and make a difference in government. And I have just loved and felt like I've made a real difference in 7 years on the city council here in Santa Barbara, and in 6 years in the state legislature. We've done some amazing things, everything from the strongest climate change law anywhere in the Western Hemisphere to some important changes in labor laws to even some basic things like setting up the Franklin Service Center just right over here, where instead of sending people to the county campus or to other places to get government services, residents of the east side can get government services and nonprofit services right here where they live. I love doing that. I love bringing government closer to people, and I love solving problems. And I'd be honored to keep on serving this community as your supervisor.
Thank you. Our first question, and Mr. Williams, you would be the first to respond to this. What do you think are the county's most serious financial challenges, and what options to raise revenues or reduce costs would you support to meet those challenges?
Well, I would say that the largest challenge to the county's finances is how volatile revenue sources are in general in the state of California. That is the first. And the second is that we have the challenge, as the rest of the state does, to invest in our infrastructure. The county is squirreling away money to do that. There are currently $584 million of a capital need over the next 5 years that's been identified. And the county has really done a good job by identifying funds for $384 million of that. We still need to figure out how we take care of the rest. And I think the way that it's handled in other communities, frankly, is just by neglecting infrastructure. But I think that a society, if you look throughout history, it's clear that a society's economy and its substance are defined by its investment in infrastructure. And we cannot be like the latter-day Roman Empire looking up at crumbling aqueducts and saying, wow, it was nice when we knew how to fix those. We have to make investments. It will be fiscally sound in the long run, but it does mean having to come up with money to do it.
Ms. Christensen.
Financial challenges. Actually, well, I do put infrastructure at the top of the list, but let me address the volatility of revenues issue. It is a state issue because the state relies on income tax. It is not a county issue. The predominant amount of revenue for the county is property tax. And even in 2008, when we had a massive economic decline, we didn't go negative. It is a very reliable source of revenue. And so it is not volatility, which I'm well familiar with. It is an issue of allocation of resources. And I can tell you where we have put resources at the county so that they're not delivering services to citizens, which is truly unfortunate. Infrastructure, that is the big issue we need to tackle, though. We are on a pay-go basis at this point at the county, facing at least $350 million worth of that $1 billion of unfunded liability that I talked about. $250 million worth of that is roads. There is a plan, and it is not going to make enough of a dent to set aside a small amount of funding over the next 10 years. It's the 18% allocation plan that you perhaps have heard about. It's not going to do it. We have to make this our top priority because this is an issue and a need in our community that is blind to socioeconomic differences among our residents, and it has got to be at the top of our list.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen, you will be addressing the next question first. And the next question is, how would you approach land use and neighborhood compatibility issues arising from the shared economy, such things as Uber, Airbnb, vacation rental homes, home businesses?
So I think, land use is at the heart of how we create a community and honor a sense of community, and especially neighborhood. The part I think I would pull out of this, especially in less than 2 minutes to answer, is the short-term rental issue that I think is really present on everyone's minds. And for a lot of folks that I've talked to, and for me, it is not, residential zoning isn't the place to operate what otherwise looks like a commercial business. That is for commercial uses. It is something that has already been through 2 planning commissions at the county, the Planning Commission, the Montecito Planning Commission, and it will be coming to the board. But frankly, and the good news is that in more urban areas, our incorporated cities like Santa Barbara, like Goleta, they can, and Carpinteria now recently, having this issue come to their city council, can address them in their own way so it's most responsive to their citizens. But the bottom line, I think, for the county is that residential zoning isn't appropriate for short-term rentals.
Mr. Williams?
Well, I think land use is a way on many subjects to form the community that we want to live in. Because preserving our quality of life isn't just about trying to freeze a snapshot of time, it is about forming the community into the place that we know and love. And on the subject of short-term rentals, it is vital. We simply cannot afford to not put some severe restrictions on short-term rentals at the minimum, because we have them in competition with the rental market as a whole, and frankly, even in competition with a part of the for sale market, as many people have bought homes expressly for the purpose of renting them out to short-term buyers or short-term renters. The rental market in Santa Barbara has not been, in recent memory, under 1% at any time. That means that rents are sky high and people are suffering. At the same time, we see consistent growth, and as a homeowner, that looks good, but for people who are trying to get into the homeowning market, that is a real challenge. And so I do think it is in our economic interest to put some restrictions on short-term rentals.
Thank you. The next question will be first to Mr. Williams. The sheriff has told the Board of Supervisors that there was a crisis in funding with the much higher estimates for the North County Jail, frequent mandatory overtime, and an inability to fill positions. What can be done to maintain public safety in light of rising costs and budget shortfalls?
Well, I can tell you that one of the most important things to do is in recruitment. We need more public safety officers coming out of the community that they serve. I can tell you, because we're now 2 blocks away from where I used to live, and around the corner from me is one of our local police officers, and the amount of contribution that he had as someone who lived and came from the community was really incredible for our neighborhood. And so I think that that's the first challenge, is if we are doing too much OT, we need to recruit and retain officers, and as many as possible from our local community. You know, the jail is also a challenging subject. I do not think that we can go very long without a facility in the North County, but at the same time, there are many people that are being warehoused in our county jail that don't belong there. If we had better mental health services, if we had, you know, that interplay worked out, there are both homeless and mentally ill that are being warehoused there because there's really nowhere else to go. And where there's nowhere else to go, they sit either in the emergency room or in jail.
Ms. Christensen?
I think there is a crisis at the county, in the Sheriff's Department and public safety. And I say this as the wife of a 34-year deputy, now retired, with many, many friends still serving, and many friends that have have served this community. And I will take only just a couple of seconds to also note that my husband, who is here today, thank you, Con, for all of your support, has the distinction of having worked in every substation in the county. His only career in public safety was for this county. There is a morale issue. There is one of the top issues that we face, though, as a county, financially and functionally, is the jail. And unfortunately, my solution to this, in large part, is executive accountability. And that means we should have never been facing a situation where we gave back $40 million of grant funding to the state to add beds that would have dealt with the mental health issues that unfortunately are dealt with as public safety and criminal issues instead. That is a tragedy. But we can only pick ourselves up and move forward. And we move forward with a North County jail in the face of multiple grand jury reports and judicial decisions and good planning, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Christensen will be first on the next question. Would you support any new taxes or tax increases, and if so, for what purposes, under what conditions, and on whom should these new taxes be imposed?
At this point, my answer is no. And that is because there is so much to be pulled from a misallocation of resources from, I'm going to put this out there. Recently, our Board of Supervisors approved 4 extra paid vacation days for every county employee. The cost of that decision is in the millions, and you can. And as someone who can tell you what that cost is, actually, I'd put it about $6 million. I don't see how we put $6 million into benefit plans for county employees, of which I am one, by the way, instead of putting that into infrastructure, mental health services, public health services, and a whole host of other needs that we have at the county. That is just one example. We have a lot of other areas where we can bring it, where we don't need to either raise revenue or cut expenditures. We just need to use our resources for the benefit of providing services to our citizens and basically preserving our quality of life here in Santa Barbara.
Mr. Williams?
Well, in my time in the state legislature and even in my time on the city council, I've had to make some very tough cuts in order to balance a budget. And I can tell you, they are heartbreaking. I had to make $14 billion worth of cuts at the state budget to get us back on track because for many, many years, both Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree on anything except to borrow more money. And we had to fix the problem in 2011 when I came into office. And so I think it is not a responsible way to go about. If we have investments that we need to make, we should not say, oh yeah, we just have the money to do that somewhere. We just need to cut other things. The county, frankly, it has nearly $1 billion of a budget, but only about $235 million of that is discretionary. Its surplus is small, and in order to make the real investments that we need to make in infrastructure, that is going to take other revenue sources. And so I would support a tax to pay for infrastructure. I would support fees that go to take care of our water systems. I think in the middle of a drought, it is irresponsible to not support the revenue that it would take for us to get out of the drought and for us to prevent a further one.
Thank you. And Mr. Williams, you will address the next question first. What do you say to people who are angry and frustrated and blame government for their troubles? And what do you say to young people who see little hope for the future?
You know, it's interesting. There's been some really good large-scale research done on this by one of President Reagan's old pollsters. And actually, young people have a lot of hope in the future, in their own economic future. What's strange is that their parents don't. And so I think we first of all should say that question is based on an incorrect premise. Young people do have hope. They do see a future for themselves. But the strange thing is, many of us, our age and older, we don't see a future for them. And I think the answer is we need to make sure that there are opportunities, that there are a way to survive, that there is a way to survive economically in this community. And I think that that anger right now is dangerous in this society. And it's not just aimed at government, it's aimed at immigrants, it's aimed at corporations, it's aimed at others. And that kind of anger in the body politic is very dangerous for a democracy and something that we as a society need to work against.
Ms. Christensen?
So, we have folks blaming government for their problems, and we have young people that have lost hope. And frankly, I totally get where they're coming from, because even at the county, I'm just going to keep it local, we are our own worst enemy sometimes. A lot of this, though, did come out of the credit crisis in 2008. I'll start, for young people, I would say all hope is not lost. I was you once upon a time. I graduated from USC, from law school and business school, with $120,000 worth of debt. And I have now had the good fortune, after almost 15 years, of paying that off. But sometimes it seems absolutely crippling. You put one foot in front of the other, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And as far as blaming government, well, it's hard not to blame government sometimes for bad decisions. It's not blame, it's owning the decisions. And I think it's fair to demand accountability. It goes back to, it's not just executive accountability, but the old saying, where the buck stops here. Well, the buck stops with our elected officials, because they have been given the authority to make decisions on our behalf, and they need to be wise ones.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen, you will address the next question first. What do you think are the effects of the realignment of responsibility for nonviolent felons in state prison or parole to the counties, and Proposition 47, which gave reduced punishment for some nonviolent crimes? And how should the county respond?
Well, in terms of AB 109 and then Prop 47, this is one of the, especially AB 109, it's just a fact of life. As a political subdivision of the state, being the county as a political subdivision in the state of California, it's somewhat like being a child with a parent that is just going to tell you what to do. And you have to deal with that situation. What was deemed to be nonviolent prisoners were then placed in our jails, creating an even greater burden on our jail system and a cost that was pushed down to the county. In terms of Prop 47, as far as I know, and I've been keeping track, it's a little too early to tell whether that creates greater burden or less burden. And I'm a data-driven decision maker, so I'm always open to what that produces in terms of burden to the county. At the end of the day, we have to deal with the folks that are that are incarcerated, and we need to have a humane way to deal with it. We also have to have a financial way to deal with it.
Mr. Williams.
Well, AB 109 was an attempt to clean up the mess that had been created by really 15 years of mandatory sentencing laws that had sent even low-level drug offenders to the state penitentiary. And it's clear that from a fiscal standpoint, realignment was the right thing to do. Prisoners that are nonviolent, non-sex offenders probably do not belong in the state penitentiary, and we as a society can't afford to have warehouse those folks in the state penitentiary because it is far more expensive to house someone in state prison than it is in the county jail. Money also went with realignment. I guess it's debatable about whether it was enough. So from a fiscal standpoint, it was clearly the right thing for you and the people of the state of California. Whether it was an easy thing to do, it is not an easy thing to do. And so counties are definitely having to struggle with that. On Prop 47, I'm going to sound conservative. I think it was a bad idea. And the reason why is because you need to protect judicial discretion. And Prop 47 forced wobblers to be misdemeanors. And that meant that it was impossible to have a sentence long enough for a low-level drug offender where they would have the incentive to go into a drug treatment program instead.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you will address the next question first, and this will be the final question before our break. Do you favor phasing out oil and gas production in the county and promoting clean energy sources? And what do you see as the consequences of doing that?
I absolutely do. I believe that that oil is a proud part of our history, but should be part of our history and not part of our future. And it has dramatic consequences, underscored by the oil spill that we all experienced last year. And though we have made improvements to pipeline safety, there is no way to stop that from happening again. Anyone who can tell you we've done X, Y, and Z and there's never going to be an oil spill again, they are kidding themselves or they are kidding you. As long as we have oil development in this county, we will have spills. We will have destruction in our communities, and it is better to be hooked on the property tax from solar and from alternative energy than it would be to be hooked on the property tax from oil in this county. And so, to me, it's not just about phasing something out, it's about phasing something in, which is a better source of energy that's more in line with our values. And there is much work to be done in that subject. That would be, one of my top 3 priorities as a supervisor, to see what can we do to have more alternative energy in this county.
Ms. Christensen?
So interesting, because I see alternative energy as our future, but oil and gas, phasing out oil and gas, I would say yes, that sounds like a wonderful idea. I don't know how we do it and still make the county economically viable. Given that oil and gas makes up 7 out of the 20 top taxpayers, property taxpayers, that is our discretionary revenue for funding schools especially and other programs here in the county. But what I do see as a short and long-term future is partnering with them to create and incentivize alternative energy as a replacement. But I can't forget what the pipeline shutdown did to any number of families here in Santa Barbara County in terms of displacement and no jobs. And I see them as partners. And I remember seeing Paul Rellis speak recently, actually, and it was very interesting because in terms of getting recycling up and going and really putting it on the map, he actually named one of our major taxpayers, it was Exxon, that came as a partner to the table. That is how we get things done. We look forward to the future and not look at each other as enemies from across the room.
Thank you both. It is time for our break. And if you have questions on your cards, please raise your hand. One of our volunteers will collect them. We will sort them and get to those questions following the break. We will resume in 10 minutes. Remember, registration materials, membership materials for the league, and the opportunity to contribute to our education fund are all available at the back of the room, along with the candidates' information. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of our forum today. Thank you very much for those of you that have submitted questions. We have sorted, and in some cases we have combined questions that were on similar topics into a single, perhaps simpler question. So if you don't hear your specific question, we do hope that you at least find that we have covered your topic. In some cases, there were questions directed to a specific candidate. We do not do those. Each question must be directed to both candidates, so anything directed to a specific candidate has been left out. Again, we will alternate who begins, and we left off with Ms. Christensen. I think you are up first on the next question. All right. And the first question is, what would you deprioritize in order to fund infrastructure improvements and maintenance while living within the current property tax and revenue stream?
Thank you. I would deprioritize, well again, I call it a reallocation of resources. I would deprioritize certainly additional benefits to employees. County employees have a very generous salary and benefits package. In fact, I will give you an example. We talked about the 4 extra vacation days that were granted this year. That was on top of, just for a 5-year employee, a package that includes 19 paid vacation days, plus sick leave, plus holidays. And to be able to bring in several $1 million to put into services in our community is fairly impactful. I would challenge anyone to come up with $6 million right off the top. The next piece, what we didn't talk about was the $700 million worth of unfunded pension liability that we face just at the county. And thanks to the Pension Reform Act, we have an opportunity to right-size the employer-employee contribution. If we do that, if we make it a 50-50 share, 50% paid by the employee, 50% paid by the employer, which is what I do, that would put $30 million on an annual basis back into services to the community.
Mr. Williams.
Well, I would just say that not giving folks a raise won't come up with the $200 million that we still need to fund in infrastructure in this county in the next 5 years. And I frankly believe there are some efficiencies, but there's not $200 million worth of efficiencies to squeeze out of the county budget. And therefore, you have to look at how are you going to invest in our future. And part of that is, can be state grants that we can apply for. And it's one of those things is not to turn away state grants for, say, the 101 freeway or other places that we need to fund. But the second part is we are going to have to come up with some revenue locally. And I would say that if we should try first countywide. If we cannot do it countywide, I would say to do it in the model that I have done with the Isla Vista community, which is the formation of a community services district for the ability to assess revenue to take care of local priorities. I think it would be better and more efficient to do it countywide, but if we cannot do it countywide, if there is too much difference of opinions about taxes and about what the spending priorities should be, then we should do it community by community through a CSD structure.
Thank you. The next question will be started by Mr. Williams. There were a number of questions on water issues. We're sort of combining them into a multi-part question, and feel free to address any part of it or all of it in 90 seconds. What is your opinion on the contract extension for the state water project? Actually, I think I will ask it as 2 questions. We have enough time. Okay, the first one would be, since it is clear that in the near future the Board of Supervisors will be asked to extend its contract with the state water project, do you have an opinion on this contract extension?
I do. I do think that though it has been delivered at far more than the promised amount, that it does not make sense to reduce the amount of diversity of sources that we have at this point. If you look at the water agencies that are in the deepest trouble in the drought, that's because they have a limited number of sources. The agency that's doing the best, the City of Santa Barbara, has the most diverse sources of water. And that's the reason why they've done the best, because some years you get something, other years you depend more on others. And we should be trying to achieve diversity of supply in all our water agencies. And so I was against state water when it was proposed, but it's been built. And in fact, I think at this point it can help because deliveries next year should be about 45%, because Northern California actually had decent rainfall, and we are going to need it in the next year. I'll just say that my ultimate strategy on water is diversification through recycled water, through conservation, and even when appropriate through desalination. And so we need to have an all of the above strategy on water because that's how deep our crisis is.
Ms. Christensen.
Interesting, because my solution is also a diversified portfolio that is comprised of conservation, desal, and recycled water. Perhaps it is crisis that drives us to the obvious solutions. The devil is in the details, and the question really at this point was about the extension of state water project contract, or a contract in the state water project, and I think it is a critical part of a diversified portfolio. It is expensive water, though, and there was a very helpful hearing in December before the Board of Supervisors that highlights this cost, especially in the face of some of the proposed projects at the state. That doesn't mean it undermines my desire to include it in the portfolio. I just don't want to be wholly reliant on it. Frankly, I think the overarching theme for me is sustainability and self-reliance in all things, including our water. And that's where we move towards actually, in terms of comparison, a much more attractive price for desal, for instance, as compared to state water, as we look out toward the future.
Thank you. And Ms. Christensen, you will address the next question first, which is also water related. In those areas over which the county has jurisdiction, what is your opinion on the drilling of private water wells, and would you support any kind of moratorium on such activities?
I think the board made the right decision on this, especially since the decision would impact every community in the county, and many of them in really unfortunate ways, that I do not support a moratorium on the drilling of water wells on private property. I do, though, this is back to the word conservation. What does that mean? Safe yield is a critical concept here. And I think, you know, let's talk about our purveyors, which represent many, many individuals and constituents in terms of what they are drawing out and providing. As someone put it, it's not always the cheapest glass of water you're looking for today. It's about a glass of water every day. And that conservation concept really is about not drawing out everything you have, but drawing out what you need. And I think that is critically important in terms of then looking to private property owners all around the county and saying, you do something that we're not. No, I'm not in favor of a moratorium. And like I said, I think the Board of Supervisors called that one correctly.
Mr. Williams?
I would just say that a moratorium, no, but restrictions, yes. If we don't do something, then the drought restrictions and conservation targets will be meaningless, because the residents, some of the residents have an ability to sink a well and access the same water table as some of our local water districts. And so if you can pretend like we're conserving water in some of these water districts, but if they're just having the same water extracted from different straws in the same cup, we're not actually conserving anything. And so we do need to take the difficult step of having some restrictions. We don't even meter those wells, right? We do not even record how much is being sucked out. And I'll tell you, it's been great to represent two counties because you see two different ways of doing things sometimes. In Ventura County, one of the supervisors proposed a moratorium, and just the threat that it might happen got people to be willing to do some more things. And so, you know, I do think that we need to examine some basic steps to make sure that our drought response and our conservation targets are not illusionary.
Thank you. The next question will be addressed by Mr. Williams first, and we're shifting gears here. How do you propose to meet the county's need for affordable housing for local employees, seniors, the disabled, and lower income residents? And where in the first district would such housing be appropriate?
Well, I'll say first of all that I have always advocated sound planning practices as a city council member and as a assembly member. And what that good planning tells you is to put housing close to the jobs, put it close to the transportation networks. And I'll give you an answer to that question by telling you some of the projects that I approved that I think are a good idea and a good service to the community. The East Beach Collection over at Montecito and Calle Cesar Chavez is a good project. It is really quality workforce housing. And you know, I know for a fact that some of our first responders live there, which, and we did not have to subsidize it. We just had to give them a zoning benefit, essentially. The El Carrillo transitional housing on Carrillo is a bit of affordable housing that helps get people off the street, and because it has mental health services on site, it helps keep them away from the street. And I will tell you that one of the funding questions we need to address, we are trying to address in the state budget this year. I am the chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus. I know some of you think I'm Latino, some of you have no idea, but I'm the chair of the API caucus, and we are attempting to get $1.3 billion out of the state surplus for affordable housing.
Ms. Christensen.
I actually have an interesting background because I served for 2 years as the assistant director for the county's Housing and Community Development Department, working with all kinds of issues related to affordable housing and the challenges we face as a county. Clearly, our urban areas are a great place to have those co-located services and functions, and that's exactly where good planning directs you in terms of transportation, jobs, and housing. There are a couple of opportunities, and frankly, I see them in 2 areas: senior and agricultural worker housing. But the key here is working with our partners. This is what I learned in HCD, or Housing and Community Development. The people that are really good at this are the City Housing Authority in particular. Frankly, I have to give a nod to the City Housing Authority. People Self-Help, the County Housing Authority, they're the folks that build the housing, that know how to do this. This is about the county bringing in funds from HUD and deploying it through these partners. And where we put it, it is a question of good land use and planning. But I mentioned, this is an interesting area, the agricultural areas that are really struggling from both an employee perspective as well as an available land perspective, while not having all kinds of negative impacts that everybody worries about. And it seems like a real, to coin a phrase from our first district supervisor, win-win opportunity. And I think that's where we should be looking as a county to add to our affordable housing stock.
Thank you. The next question will be addressed first by Ms. Christensen. How can the Goleta Beach challenge be solved?
I think we have to ask Mother Nature. That is a challenge in terms of erosion at the beach and a loss of one of our most visited and enjoyed county parks. How do we deal with the erosion of that beach? We have all kinds of challenges that we have to face there in terms of cost, in terms of the Coastal Commission, in terms of what we'd like to do versus what we can do from a legal standpoint. And I honestly don't have a good answer, and I think it's something that that every one of the supervisors on the board has struggled with, especially in the face of this really dire-looking situation. Even our second district supervisor, who is here today, I think that has been a very real struggle up there on the dais, and I don't have the perfect answer.
Mr. Williams?
Well, I don't think there is any ultimate solution. There are things that we can do to make it better. I think a lot of people sometimes have the illusion that government can control everything, and that really is an illusion. One of the basic problem at Goleta Beach is lack of sediment. We actually created this problem when we built 2 dams, Gibraltar and Kachuma, because that sediment used to transport down and feed the beaches all along the south coast. So we have a lack of sediment problem. And so part of that would be, as technology improves, to be able to deal with the fines issue in Kachuma or elsewhere. We could have a win-win if we could take out some of the sediment at Kachuma or Gibraltar and be able to use that to solve some of our sedimentation problems along the coast. The other is other natural solutions. I think we should recreate the kelp forest that used to exist out in front of Goleta Beach that helped defray some of the wave action. It was lost in the '84 El Nino, and really the sediment, the erosion has increased since that time.
The next question will be addressed first by Mr. Williams. Does the county do enough for the homeless? What else could be done?
No, but I don't want to say that in an accusatory way. The county, like many governments, does not have the monetary resources to do everything that we might want them to do. I do think that what we are increasingly seeing is successful efforts at tackling homelessness and that ways that save money by addressing some of the needs of the biggest problems. The people who create the most calls for service, the people who, because of mental health challenges or elsewhere, end up being thrown in jail the most often. And that's a really good model because when you look at it statistically, you find out that 80% of the costs are being incurred by a small percentage of the individuals. And if you really try to create some wraparound services for those individuals, you can actually save a lot of money and not just cost more money to the body politic. We have a challenge. So do all coastal communities in California, roughly the same percentage of people in those communities. But it is something that there are some solutions out there, not all of which come from government.
Ms. Christensen?
The homeless issue has been a challenge we have faced for probably longer than I have been an attorney. We've had a task force made up of all of our local jurisdictions in the county, but it is ultimately a challenge that we face under, we now call it behavioral wellness, but for most of my time at the county it was alcohol, drug, and mental health services. I think there is a lot of opportunity here at the county, and I am very pleased that we have a director now heading up behavioral wellness that seems to have the knowledge and skills to be able to navigate this territory, particularly in the area of treatment and prevention of addiction, and that will, I think, tackle a large part of this problem. But we have to, again, make this a priority. And unfortunately, the county's track record has not been so great, because for my time at the county, the department has been unfortunately mismanaged. And what we are seeing right now is millions of dollars going back to the state and federal governments instead of being retained as treatment opportunities and services in our community. But again, my highlight here is that I think we're on the right track and have been so for about a year, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that.
Thank you. And Ms. Christensen, you will start the next question. How should the protection of species habitat, open space, and other environmental values be balanced against property rights and growth needs?
Well, Well, I think that the first word is critically important. It's balance. But it has to do with our community values and what I think of as Santa Barbara values. I think we place a very high value on our natural resources, on our coastline, and that is where we get to play a role. We get to actually own the role of designing our community and protecting our open space and our natural resources. I think that we have made great strides in this direction and need to honor and just place that and keep that at the top of the list. And certainly that's where I am in terms of representing our community, is protecting our open space, protecting the beauty that is Santa Barbara and what we enjoy so much in terms of quality of life.
Mr. Williams?
Well, this is fundamentally the issue that first got me involved in politics. I feel that defending the urban limit line, preventing development outside of the existing urbanized areas of our community is one of the most fundamental ways to preserve our quality of life. And therefore it is an extremely important value. I will say that I've learned a little bit more than when I started in this at 17. Fighting development is not the only way to preserve open space and ag land. Often it is with trying to work together with some of the property owners and with property rights. I think, for instance, in agriculture, fundamental to be able to keep, for instance, the Gaviota Coast undeveloped is the need to keep farming operations going, because we do not have the resources in government sufficient to acquire all of that land. And then the last is we need, as a community, to also rally around when there is opportunities to purchase land so that the conflict between property rights and open space does not reach a head. There will be an opportunity coming out in the next couple weeks. We need to rally around it and really protect the open space that we have in the First District.
Thank you. And Mr. Williams, you will be up next on the next question. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then you will have an opportunity for a closing statement. So the next to last question: what is your position on medical marijuana dispensaries in the unincorporated areas of the county?
Well, I'll tell you that we have marijuana everywhere in this county. A sufficient amount of research has been done on it to say that for the average teenager, unfortunately, it is easier to acquire than alcohol. And we need to live up to the reality that the black market is extremely accessible, and it's a source of human pain. I personally think if you buy marijuana and you don't know where the source of it is, chances are that's coming on cross-border trade from cartels and is helping create an infrastructure for cocaine and sex trafficking. So I think it's a problem. It is for that reason that I believe that it is better to have some that is not in the black market, some that is in permitted medicinal marijuana dispensaries, because, you know, I know some elderly folks who need it for their arthritis, just a cream, right? And that sweet lady, she does not want to have to go to some underground drug dealer and help create sex trafficking. She wants to be able to buy it from a reputable person and a reputable business, and that we should facilitate that in limited form. I think inevitably the question is whether you support the initiative coming up, and I don't. I'll elaborate as to why.
Ms. Christensen?
Sure. I think the voters voted on medical marijuana a long time ago, and in terms of providing access, well, actually there's some recent legislation that kind of moves us more toward honoring that. The difficulty is It's a zoning issue again. This is a community planning issue. Where are we going to have dispensaries? And they need to be placed appropriately so that they are not having negative impacts on communities, as we have seen up on Milpas, so that they are located not near schools. But, you know, this is the job of government ultimately, is to honor and respect the law and the wishes of the voters, and then make decisions that are reflective of good community planning. So, I mean, in short, medical marijuana dispensaries, you got to figure out where the right place is, and certainly there's a lot of obvious places that aren't the right places. And then narrow it down from there. Frankly, I mean, you know, one of those places may be near locations where folks would otherwise obtain controlled substances. So I think we have some indicators here that might point us where the appropriate place is.
Thank you. And Ms. Christensen, the final question before the closing statements. What has been your biggest success in your current position?
In my current position as the
county...
Or
any prior position.
I like the current position. It's okay. I'm focused now on the current position as the county investment officer.
Don't want to confuse it.
Because I get to manage $1 billion portfolio of all of our taxes. And I've done that mostly in a zero interest rate environment. So my charge is safety, then liquidity, and then yield. Returning a fair return so that we can provide additional resources to all of the public agencies, which means services in our community. And I have done so. I have actually beat our benchmark fairly handily, which is the yield part, but I have done so while at the same time reducing risk in our portfolio and increasing liquidity. In other words, the number of days, the average, sorry, this is so technical, but it is something I love. The weighted average maturity on our portfolio is less than a year. And what that means is that when any one of our schools or our special districts or a county department needs to pay a bill overnight, that money is always available every single time. And fundamentally, my job, never ever lose the money. I never ever lose the money. I only make money at the county, but in a very, very safe way.
Mr. Williams?
Well, the one I'm next most proud of after giving birth and having a little daughter, the thing I'm next most proud of is the toughest climate change law anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. We, as a community, have yearned to have energy choices that are consistent with our values. A lot of us feel, wow, we want to have cleaner energy, but you know, we're sort of stuck with what we got. Well, we don't have to be stuck with what we got. And what I did is I saw the opportunity when the governor issued his State of the State at the beginning of last year. Saw the opportunity to increase our alternative energy and increase our amount of energy efficiency. I am the principal co-author of Senate Bill 350 and the author of AB 802. These companion bills get us to 50% renewable energy by 2030 and double our energy efficiency work as a state. And this, combined with obviously some work that needs to be done on behalf of by consumers, right? We still need to make the right choices in our transportation choices to really do the best job we can do. But we will be the first state to really meet the kind of goals that were outlined by the President in the Paris Agreement.
Thank you. We will now have a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. And Mr. Williams, you will go first.
My roots in this community run deep. I grew up here. My family and I just lived a couple blocks over there on 500 Street. I live right now in Carpinteria, a block away from Canalino School. I love this community. Its future is my family's future. Its past is my history and my family's history. And I want to fight for it. I have done other careers in teaching, ran a support department for a tech business, but the thing that makes me most passionate is public service. I think every human being wants to feel useful, wants to feel like they are the right kind of tool in the hands of their community or in the hands of God. And I feel that way right now because you have put your trust in me as a community to do good things. And I've been there. I've been there on our priorities, on water, on energy, on funding basic services in our community. And I just ask once more that you show that trust, and I will live up to it, and I will continue to fight for this community. Thank you so much.
Ms. Christensen?
I think we're all here today because we all love this community. It is such an incredible place to live, work, raise our children, and just be part of. And that is perhaps what I have enjoyed most about my career in public service, the last 15 years of my life. It was not what I planned, but it is something that I draw great joy from. And it is what I guess drove me to take the next step in the face of significant financial challenges that we have as a community and at the county. I mentioned that we face well over $1 billion worth of unfunded liabilities. $700 million of that is pension liability, and at least $350 million of that is our roads, our parks, and our facilities. What I didn't mention is that in addition to being your county investment officer, I am also an elected trustee to the pension board, which gives me a unique background and understanding in pension law and pension funding. So that is what I will be using to tackle our pension challenge. I serve on the City of Santa Barbara's Fire and Police Commission because public safety is near and dear to my heart, and certainly one of the things that we need and demand and require in all of our communities. And so for all of these reasons, I have decided to step out, to move from serving you as a fiduciary and a trustee behind the scenes at the county into this much more public position as your first district supervisor. And I thank you all for coming out today and listening to what we have to say.
I want to thank both candidates for coming and sharing their views with us. I want to thank all of you for coming. Thank you to Larry Nimmer for providing the video, to Alfredo Peralta of Gary Atkins Sound for providing our sound system today, to Silvio Uribe for providing translation, to Franklin School and the Santa Barbara Unified School District for the facilities, and all the volunteers from the League of Women Voters who have made this forum possible today. The League will be holding another forum next Monday for the 3rd District Supervisor race. That's May 2nd, 7 p.m. at St. Mark's Church in Los Olivos, co-sponsored by We Watch and the San Ynez Valley Association of Realtors. Please make sure that you are correctly registered to vote and do vote. The deadline to register is May 23rd, and as has been in the news recently, if you wish to be an independent voter, make sure that you register no party preference rather than American Independent Party. It is a little confusing on the registration form, but please keep that in mind. Your vote does matter. Please register and vote. We have everything back there for you to do that. Please drive safely, and thank you so much for coming.